Too Sweet Wrestling Podcast. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is Friday, March 2nd, and this is episode 9 of the Too Sweet Podcast. Yes, this is going to be a full one. We are going to be talking about why I think WWE is going down a bad road with this Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar storyline. Why Scott D'Amore is talking about TNA and how they are creating stars and how they will create stars. How WWE views Braun Strowman, and are they holding off his Wrestlemania storyline for Roman Reigns? What's your main event WrestleMania? Should it be Reigns and Lesnar? Should it be Nakamura and AJ Styles? And lastly, we're going to be talking about Fastlane, the Fastlane build, and how it is hurting Nakamura's momentum. So first, we're going to do a little bit of house cleaning before we get into this. We are on Podomatic today and YouTube today. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel. I have the link below. Feel free to like this video for your boy. And whatever comments that you have about the podcast, leave them down below, whether it's Podomatic or YouTube. Let me know. If you dislike some things, if you like some things, if you want to talk about the storylines, just let me know. Also, you can find my t-shirt store at tpublic.com/OMGCoreyB. And I'm not going to waste any more time. Let's get right on into this. Oh, we're going to actually have the Flashback Friday segment back too as well. I've been missing out on that. Not today though. So let's get right on into this. First, we're going to start off with Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns. Let me get myself together here. Last Monday, Roman Reigns came out and cut what some thought was a shoot promo. I thought initially that, I knew initially that it was nowhere near a shoot. Like, nobody was back there caught surprised by that promo. But we're going to get into the report that I read. Very interesting report that says that there's reportedly a plan in place by WWE to get Roman Reigns by WrestleZone. From WrestleZone, a plan in place to get Roman Reigns cheered at WrestleMania 34. That's what I said that the promo was all about in the first place, right after he cut it. But right as someone came up with the idea when WWE still had enough time to tell Lesnar and Heyman not to come to Anaheim. And that idea is that WWE is trying to make Reigns and Lesnar the build as much as a shoot as they can. And this is pretty interesting because, like, I think I'm one man, one podcast. Like, it feels like against the world when I say this because everybody universally, I've been listening to everybody and they've said that this is a fantastic idea to get Roman Reigns cheered. You know, this is going to go over like bonkers. And I don't think it's a good idea. And I'll explain myself because I seen this past week people were talking about how Roman Reigns turned the crowd into his favor. They were booing him, and then all of a sudden they were cheering him. He turned the crowd into his favor. Well, here's what I have to say about that promo. I don't think it was legendary. I don't think it was epic, but I thought it was a good promo. Roman Reigns showed some fire, and like I've been saying for at least 3 years now, if WWE would just let Roman Reigns be Roman Reigns, the dude would have been far better off years ago than he is now. The crowd would have accepted him years ago. But as it pertains to the material that he was saying in the promo, I don't think he got the crowd to get in his favor. Like, the crowd didn't decide, okay, we're booing Roman Reigns. Now at the end of the promo, okay, Roman Reigns is our guy now, we're never going to boo him again. No, I think it's a case of the crowd saying, well, it's about time somebody said it. Look, we all thinking this. It's about time somebody said it, and that caused the cheer. And it was a good idea in the moment to, that got the crowd to cheer. Do I think they're going to be in favor of Roman Reigns down the rest of the build? I'm about to get into that. As for the promo, I wasn't as into it as other people, because we just saw this with John Cena. Like, he just pretty much, I went back and watched the John Cena and Roman Reigns promo, that first one where they got into it, it was kind of like a work shoot or whatever, what have you. And it's basically what he said about John Cena for the most part. So I can't get into it because I dug what he said about John Cena, even though he was flubbing all over his lines. I dug what he said about John Cena, and I dug that the first time. Now it's like they're going back to it with Brock Lesnar. And look, the remix is never better than the original. That's just my opinion. That's just the way I think, and that's the case here. At least in my opinion. I could be wrong, I could be right. That's just how I feel. Also, while I think they are going down a dangerous road, one reason is because Roman Reigns just used all of his material. Like, if you go back and look at that John Cena and Roman Reigns feud, he did that the first week. Like, what else is he going to say about Brock Lesnar? Now, he's basically called him lazy. We know that. A part-timer, we know that. He doesn't defend the belt. We know that. And like he said, everything. They should have like held off on that, on him using everything. Because now Paul Heyman has to come back. And Brock Lesnar has to come back. And if they're going to go with a shoot style program, guess what? Paul Heyman and also Brock Lesnar is going to say some things that we all know to be true about Roman Reigns, much like John Cena said. And you just watch what I tell you. They're gonna say that stuff. This is how they're gonna do it. They're gonna say that stuff, and the crowd is gonna swing back in Heyman's favor, because the crowd already likes Paul Heyman to begin with. So the crowd gonna swing back in Paul Heyman's favor. They're gonna swing back in Brock Lesnar's favor, because Brock Lesnar is gonna probably grab the mic and say something juvenile and cuss Roman Reigns out, and then that's gonna get the crowd to cheer. Just like he got the crowd to cheer at the Roman Reigns situation last week, when it just so happened to be that Roman Reigns was the guy that finally said something about Brock Lesnar being lazy. So look, the crowd is going to swing back in Heyman and Brock's favor, and I just don't see a comeback for Roman Reigns. What else is he going to say? I don't think he has anything else to say as far as the shoot stop promo goes. And also, we're going to have to get into a situation eventually where Roman Reigns is going to have to get into a back and forth with Paul Heyman. And look, this is coming from no hate from Roman Reigns, but I just don't like his chances as looking good when he gets into a back and forth with Paul Heyman, of all people. One of the best promos in all of wrestling all time, and going currently today. Unless they tell Paul Heyman to completely back off of him, or unless they tell Brock Lesnar to completely back off of him, we'll see. And I said this last Monday, and that is that I wish WWE would just take their medicine. I wish they would have just because look, the crowd at WrestleMania, they're gonna boo Roman Reigns. It's just gonna be, it is what it is. And WWE just keeps fighting it and fighting it. I mean, you're not gonna change that situation over. So I said last Monday, let's say that their ultimate dream scenario works and the crowd turns on Brock Lesnar. Then you're gonna have a situation where, you remember the last time that happened, people knew Brock Lesnar was going to leave, and then they actually got the crowd WWE wasn't trying it at the time, but the crowd turned on Brock Lesnar. You remember what happened the last time the crowd turned on Brock Lesnar? It became a crowd show where the crowd was just crapping on the match, the whole match, Goldberg and Lesnar. So they need to be careful with that. And just look at the situation. The WrestleMania, like I said, the WrestleMania crowd is going to boo Roman Reigns as it is. So I wish they would have gone with the Roman Reigns. They should have just let him keep doing what he's doing. At least go down a more heelish route instead of trying to get the crowd to cheer him. And lastly, but not leastly, you can only shoot for so long. The thing that I remember about the John Cena and Roman Reigns back and forth was that it was all over with after 1 week. Like, it completely went up to its highest pitch on that one night, and then that was it. It just went dramatically down every week. And once Paul Heyman gets out what he has to get out, and once Brock Lesnar shoots or whatever and says what he has to say, the feud is going to go downhill, because you can only shoot, cowboy, shoot for so long, only but for so long before it becomes old, and then the feud just goes downhill. And I mean, look, I wish the best for them, but this is going to be interesting. I don't think it's going to work. I think I'm the only person that's thinking that way. We'll see how it all goes down. So next up, we got Scott D'Amore here. Let me get myself together here. And first of all, I really enjoy the fact that Scott D'Amore is taking over more lead role along with Cyrus. I think there's some big things to come. But earlier in the week, he talked about how it was a false narrative that they don't have talent under contract. And I'll just read the full quote for you. It's a false narrative that we don't have talent under contract. The vast majority of our talents are under long-term contracts. Take a look at the departure of Bobby Lashley. He was under contract to us until almost summertime this year, excuse me. And they were okay with facilitating that his deal come up sooner than expected. At the moment, there's only a small number of talent that are going to have deals coming up in the next 6 months. He went on to talk about EC3. He talked about how EC3 was a great talent, but people talk about him as if he's irreplaceable. And he brought up a good point that, what was EC3 before he came to Impact Wrestling? They turned EC3 into a star, much like TNA turned Bobby Roode and your Eric Young's into a star and your AJ Styles into a star. And you know what? I'm with him on this one. And the fact that it doesn't matter as much as you want to say about Impact Wrestling, TNA, or what have you. No matter the regime, they've always passed the buck and made a new star. And the latest version was EC3. You had your guys like AJ Styles going out, your Samoa Joe's going out, just the main names going out, and EC3 was the guy that was there. They made EC3 into a star. EC3 had a lot to do with that as well. I'm not saying that he didn't, but he came up from the bottom up, from scratch, and they turned EC3 into a big name. And look, that's the way it is now. Impact Wrestling, no matter how you look at, we talk about the Impact departures. And I really hate that narrative, because we don't talk about people leaving from Ring of Honor. And when people leave from Ring of Honor to NXT, people talk about it like, oh, I'm just so glad that they, got up from Ring of Honor. It's like a promotion that they've got up to NXT, and it's just such a great thing. But when people leave Impact, it's like, oh, we need to talk about the Impact departures. To which, I don't get that. It is what it is, but I don't get that. Another thing I don't get is the WWE reject narrative, in that people are talking, anytime somebody that spent an ounce of time in WWE comes to Impact Wrestling, it's like, oh, they just relying on WWE rejects. And look, TNA has had that time where they've relied on former WWE guys. At times I didn't like it. At times I thought it was just fine. And I mean, just look at, just to close that with Ring of Honor, and Cody Rhodes is dominating there. Ring of Honor, New Japan, or what have you. Nobody brings up the term WWE reject. I mean, the only time I've heard it brought up anytime is in this little storyline that's going on with Omega, and that was storyline. It wasn't by anybody that said it. But looking at TNA's roster, they have guys that you look at and you can say that. And excuse me, Impact Wrestling's roster, they have guys that you look at and you say that, okay, they can build that guy up. That guy can become a star one day. And I'm looking at Desmond Xavier, to be honest with you. That's a guy that can be a star. They have guys there, Brian Cage, Austin Aries. So when we look at guys like EC3 leaving, we can't just assume the worst for Impact Wrestling, because the next guy's gonna grab the torch. And like Cyrus and Scott D'Amore has been preaching, look, Rome wasn't built in a day. So it's not going to happen overnight that they bring up these guys, but they're on a good path, and they have this thing with Lucha Underground going. This is going to be huge. Lucha Underground versus Impact Wrestling, April 6th, WrestleCon. That thing is going to be huge. I put a YouTube video out on that as well if you want to check that out. But looking at the narrative, at the story, yes, it is a false narrative that Impact Wrestling doesn't have talent under contract. So, I mean, they have stars. It's going to be a patient thing, and they're going to eventually replace you guys like EC3 and you guys that have already left. So I'll be interested to keep up with Impact Wrestling and see if Cyrus and D'Amore can build this thing up, which I think they will. So next up, where are we going next up? Let's see here. We are going to go with what should be the main event for WrestleMania. I'm sorry I took so long on that one. But should it be Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar, or should it be Nakamura and AJ Styles? Before I get into what my answer is, I'm just going to start with this. I saw the debate going on Twitter. And look, I mean, when Nakamura won at Royal Rumble, everybody was like, okay, Nakamura, AJ Styles at the main event WrestleMania. Cool. We good with it. And now it's like it's just been a big Twitter debate that's launched back and forth. And that Nakamura and AJ Styles, people are knocking down Nakamura and AJ Styles as a main event. And I mean, I don't really get that. But I'm going to get into this. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why Nakamura and AJ Styles should be the main event. First, we're going to look at Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns. Here's what I'm worried about more than anything else when it pertains to Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar. You remember when it was Dean Ambrose and Brock Lesnar? It was supposed to be this big street fight that was supposed to be huge, and it turned out that it was one of the most underwhelming matches probably in WrestleMania history. Brock Lesnar wins with like one F5 and it's over. They didn't use any weapons or nothing like that. Then Dean Ambrose comes out and he says, well, look, man, Brock didn't want to do business. And as soon as he said that, I remember hearing that and saying, I knew it. I knew something was up about that match. And it turns out that, yeah, Brock blew the match because he was going to UFC. He didn't want to hurt himself. So I look at this match and I don't want to get into a position to where Brock Lesnar is in the main event and he like, well, you know, I'm looking out for me. I'm going to the UFC. I don't care about this match. And you don't put it past Brock Lesnar. We've seen it before. He could do it again. So that worries me. The whole narrative of this match worries me. I should say the narrative. I should say the quality of this match worries me, because not only from the standpoint that Brock could decide that he wants to go into business for himself, but the same old Brock Lesnar match. And I mean, I know people say that Reigns and Lesnar had a good match at WrestleMania 31. I think that match, I think people consider that as good because it was better than what we all expected it to be. So that's why people consider it to be okay. That was a good match. And I just don't think that that's going to hold up this year because Brock Lesnar, and I'm sick of what he does, and that's suplex the whole match. And at best, that's what we're going to get. We're going to get Brock suplexing Roman Reigns around. Suplex, walk around. And that's going to just tire the crowd out. Crowd's going to become restless. The crowd is not going to be into the match. We're going to get a bad crowd. And a bad crowd is never that great for a WrestleMania main event. Also, as I mentioned earlier, look, if WWE's dream scenario happens, and the crowd turns on Roman Reigns, on Lesnar, and they're already hating Roman Reigns, then it's gonna be Goldberg Lesnar. Who wants to see that again? Who wants to take the risk of that happening again? There are a lot more risks as it pertains to Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns, and I'm gonna get into another risk that's out there, and I'm gonna get into that later. But there are a lot of risks when it pertains to putting on Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns last. And lastly, as for the build to Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar, this shoot stuff, like, if I'm doing Roman Reigns and Lesnar and they said that, okay, we're going to eventually get into some shoot stuff, they should have did that on the very last week. That would have catapulted that into, the status that it could be the main event. People would have been high on that. Instead, the shoot stuff was done on the first week, and now we got to turn this thing somehow into a storyline that's going to go on for 6 weeks. So looking at the AJ Styles and Nakamura match, this is a first-time dream match in WWE. Now, this has been an assumed match, much like Reigns and Lesnar, but this has not been an assumed match for an entire year. Look, we've been talking about Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar ever since Roman Reigns beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania. We're like, okay, next year is going to be Reigns and Lesnar. As for it pertains to AJ Styles and Nakamura, we all wanted that match to happen, but Jinder Mahal was holding the belt for all that time, and we was wondering, okay, could it be Jinder Mahal? Is WWE gonna do this? And all of this didn't come together until AJ Styles actually beat him in London that time on SmackDown. That was a shocking win. I didn't think they were gonna go there. So this match didn't come together until AJ Styles won that belt. Also, like I've been saying, Nakamura did not hold a mid-card title to hold him over until WrestleMania, until he won the Royal Rumble. So this has been an assumed match for far less of a time than Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar. As for the quality of the match, look, this could be one of the greatest matches in recent WrestleMania history. Why not put it on last? I mean, just look at the people there. I know that Nakamura can be hit or miss in WWE sometimes, but when he gets in there with AJ Styles, with John Cena, who's not a great worker, but can do enough to have a really good match, he comes through. So I'm looking at this AJ Styles match, and it's gonna be nothing but a 4.5-star match at least. So it's gonna be a great match. There is no assumed worries about the quality of the match. Also, there's no assumed worries about the quality of what the fans will be when this match is going on. The fans will be on fire for this match. They will want to see it. They'll be entertained throughout the entire match. They'll be on fire throughout the whole match. And I like a good hot crowd throughout the whole match. And that's guaranteed to happen with Nakamura and Styles. Also, as for the build to Nakamura and Styles, I don't like that we're not getting as much build as Reigns and Lesnar, and I'm about to get into that in the next segment. But I like Nakamura and AJ Styles' build much more than what I assume Reigns and Lesnar's build will devolve into. And that is, it's going to be all about the belt. Look, AJ Styles, you have the belt and I want it. Look, Nakamura, I'm the champ and you need to stay where you are. It's very simple. I love that, and I think that it is going to be a great build heading into WrestleMania. So that's why I believe that AJ Styles and Nakamura should main event. Therefore, I mean, that helps out WWE in that there's no problems, there's no worries. It's going to be a great match. It's going to be a great build. I'm not saying that Reigns and Lesnar doesn't have the potential to be a great build. I just think that it's going to devolve down into nothing because of the way that they're going. So that's why I think Nakamura and AJ Styles should go on last. Hopefully it does. So moving on. Remember I told y'all that I had a worry another worry about the Reigns-Lesnar match. And it's not much of a big worry because I'm about to get into it now. There was a report that came out that, as I get myself together here, there was a report that came out that WWE was concerned over that WWE was concerned about the Roman Reigns Brock Lesnar match because of this guy, this Johnny Bravo guy. There was a report that came out that they were concerned about him having something on Roman Reigns as far as the steroids go and whatever. I haven't really been talking about this because, look, it's put up or shut up time for this guy. But here's the kicker in this report. They're saying that they're reportedly holding up Braun Strowman in this WrestleMania storyline in case something comes out on this. That way they can throw Braun Strowman into the main event or into a three-way match. I have a bunch of problems with all of that, but I definitely believe one part of this report to be 100% right, and I'm about to eventually get into that. As for this guy, like I said, look, it's put up or shut up time. If you got something, just come on out with it. It's enough talking. Do the walking. Let's see it. What you got? Because it's enough of this talking. We are 6 weeks away or 5 weeks away, what have you, away from WrestleMania. And this guy been talking for at least a month or so that he has something. Well, bring it out if you got something, or just shut up and back out if you don't. Because looking at this storyline, I'm gonna tell you the part that I absolutely believe, and that is WWE is holding off Braun Strowman and his WrestleMania storyline for something. I don't know what. Could it be this? Who knows? I'm not gonna sit here and say that that's the reason why. But they have Braun Strowman in limbo for something, and it is just bogus. Because looking at the hierarchy of their stars, I mean, Braun Strowman is at least in the top 5 as it pertains to who's one of the biggest stars in the company. And when it comes to fan response as well, the fans completely adore the guy. I mean, there's another report that came out that said that talked about how high WWE was on Braun Strowman, and that they booked him strongly in the elimination chamber so that he could, stay over. And that, to which I say that they should, if you wanted to book him strongly, you should have just had him lose with all of the finishers and 4 guys piled on top of him. But that's another story for another day. But they talked about how they like this size and how they like that the crowd is behind him. And that when I see that, I'm like, okay, if they like him that much, to which I'm sure they do, what else does it take for him to get thrown into the WrestleMania main event? They're holding him off for something, to which is a shame because he's starting to lose momentum now. And that is horribly bad, because you're going to get into a situation to where I look at this thing kind of like to where Samoa Joe was in TNA. Samoa Joe was over, hugely over, and the crowd was white hot on dude in that. And eventually he started to lose momentum, and TNA lost out because they did not put the belt on him at the proper time. I think this is going to be the case with Braun Strowman. Braun Strowman has some momentum, and they keep not capitalizing on his momentum. They keep bringing him down. And once they put the title on him, it's going to be like, okay, cool, Braun Strowman has the title, but it's too late. His momentum is gone. So, looking at this report, I have a tough time believing it, because if WWE was thinking about that already, they would have already set up a triple threat match with Strowman, Reigns, and Lesnar, and then just bump the Roman out if something was up. I think they would have already had that set up. But looking at Braun Strowman, I don't like the way they're using him. And I mean, it's not that I don't like the way they're using him. I don't want to say that. It's just that they're not capitalizing on his momentum, and I've seen that fail time in and time out. And I think we're on the road to that. So I'm going to be keeping a close eye on the situation. This guy, Johnny Bravo, he needs to come out with whatever he says he has. He needs to come with it. We as wrestling fans, we want to see it one way or the other. Either you got something on Roman Reigns or you don't. Or you just trying to play everybody. Come out with it. So, moving on to the final topic of the day. I'm going to talk about this Fastlane build. And look, I'm going to talk about the fact that it is that WWE is steadily hurting Nakamura's momentum when it pertains to this Fastlane build. Oof, man, I could sure use a drink of water right now. That is the ultimate drawback of doing a one-man podcast. You have nobody to throw it to, that you gotta keep talking. But it is what it is. I'm the most electrifying man in all of podcasting entertainment. I'm totally joking about that. But keeping this thing rolling, Nakamura had the fantastic win at the Royal Rumble. Like I said, he needed to win that to gain all of his momentum back. Sometimes you can be down in the gutter and you get that great win, that great performance at the Royal Rumble, you win it and you gain all your momentum back. And that's exactly what happened with Nakamura. Gained all his momentum back. Now, ever since then, they've had him off TV in a couple of weeks, if I'm not mistaken. They've had him like in a tag match, and then they had him in a nothing match. You thought Cena was coming back to challenge Nakamura at Fastlane. I thought that as well. And no, Cena is going into the Fastlane main event. Nakamura got Aiden English in a bad match because the crowd wanted to chant Rusev Day, and they also, want to love Nakamura as well. So that match made no sense. And it's been a steady devolved Nakamura, because they're just having him do nothing. And that's why, in my estimation, there should be no March pay-per-view. The Elimination Chamber pay-per-view should switch back and forth between SmackDown and Raw. And whoever is the opposite side should not have a March pay-per-view. Because as it pertains to right now, we should be building towards Nakamura and AJ Styles at the same time that we're building towards Reigns and Lesnar. But we're not. And as it goes, we're only going to have like 3 weeks, if my math is lining up right, to build towards Nakamura and AJ Styles. Now, within those 3 weeks, if they do it right, they can bring it back up to the fever pitch that they had it at when Nakamura said that he would be challenging AJ Styles, and the crowd roof just blew off the place. They can get it back to that point. But they've lost momentum. Now they have to build it back up. So they would have never had to build it back up if we wouldn't have had this Fastlane pay-per-view. They should have done something with Nakamura at the point where he's paying attention to the Fastlane main event. He should have been facing off with one of the Fastlane competitors. He should have been in some type of backstage segment with all of the Fastlane main event competitors or something like that. They need to have something like that. Have him sitting ringside like Alexa Bliss and Charlotte did at the Women's Royal Rumble. Have him sitting ringside at the main event or something that's going to have him invested into the main event and the possible competitors. I mean, they only have the whole roster in the Fastlane main event, but the possible competitors that he's going to face off with at WrestleMania. So that's my beef with that. I wish that they do something with Nakamura. They need to keep him invested with the fans and not have him off of TV or on TV and in a nothing segment. They need to do something more with him. I think in those 3 weeks they can build it back up, but we'll see. I'll be paying much attention today. So that's it for today's podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Oh, and one last thing, the Flashback Friday moment of the week is when Edge confronted John Cena. I recently watched this. This is before Cena's match versus Brock Lesnar at Extreme Rules in 2012. Edge gave that impassioned promo. You know, I came to talk to John Cena, but I don't even know this is John Cena. I don't even know who you are. And it was just a fantastic promo. Crowd was heavily involved. Got him to cheer Cena for once. And it was just a great promo. I went back and watched it. It was fantastic. The pop when Edge came out of nowhere. It was just great. So that's it for this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to follow me at 2SweetPod, the number 2SweetPod on Twitter, and at OMG Corey B. That's my Twitter handles. You can find me on YouTube. You can just type in the search bar OMG Corey B. So feel free to comment. What do you think about my podcast, this podcast, the topics? Feel free to comment and let me know. I will definitely respond.